So a lot of times when I ask people, okay, what are emotions? What are good emotions? They'll say, oh, like happy and joy and love. Yeah, those make us feel good. Those are comfortable emotions to feel. Well, what do you think bad emotions are? And I get the answer, angry, sad, depressed, lonely, all of those emotions that are uncomfortable to feel.
Today's masterclass is on emotional eating. Our guest today is Sabrina Rogers, a licensed mental health counselor, intuitive eating and body image expert, and recovering perfectionist. After healing her own eating disorder and body image issues, she's helping women to make the shift to intuitive eating and body acceptance. Sabrina provides counseling to individuals and coaching through the emotional eating revolution. Sabrina also is the host of the Emotional Eating Therapist Show. Welcome, Sabrina.
Anita, thank you so much for bringing me on today. It is a pleasure to be here.
What is emotional eating? Because I know it could mean many things for many people. So let's just unpack that a little bit, the best we can.
Yeah, that's a good place to start because I think most of society has this idea of emotional eating being this really bad thing. I always refer to it as a big, hairy, scary monster that we need to like run away from and never, ever, ever, for whatever reason, eat for emotional reasons. And I call complete BS on that. And I remember the moment almost like it was yesterday that I had this realization. And that's when like everything around eating really started to shift for me. But if we think about emotional eating and we break it down just very simplistically into the two words, emotional eating, it's eating for any emotional reason. That means eating when we're happy, which often doesn't get lumped into that emotional eating. It means eating when we're bored or sad or lonely. It's eating for any emotional reason. So if you're feeling an emotion, and you're eating, it's emotional eating. And I just want to point out, how often are we not feeling something? Now, we are human beings, we are emotional creatures, and we are always feeling something. Whether that's, this good, air quotes, good emotion or positive emotion or a negative or a bad emotion or somewhere kind of in between, we're always feeling something. And the only time I can think of that I'm not feeling something is when I'm sleeping, or that one time after I was in a car accident and I was unconscious. Otherwise, every time, all day, every day, I'm feeling an emotion. And that was what really shifted for me with my eating, is that when I realized all eating is emotional eating, it took a lot of that guilt and shame off anytime I ate because I was sad or because I was lonely. And it was just so freeing. And so I just love to put that out there for other people of like, it's okay. We all do it.
Yes. So why do we always seem to self-sabotage and fail at our attempts to stop emotional eating?
The biggest reason I can see is that, one, I don't really believe in self-sabotage. And we can chat about that some more. But also because we keep seeing emotional eating as something that's really bad and we shouldn't be doing it. And so anytime we reach for food, when we need to soothe ourselves, we then refer to that or see that as self-sabotage. And, I fell off the wagon again and beat ourselves up. Whereas if we look at this as, hey, I'm just trying to take care of myself. I'm not sabotaging. I'm just trying to manage my emotions. I'm just trying to calm down after a crazy, stressful, chaotic day. And food does the trick.
So why does emotional eating have such a bad reputation then? Because you're on the contrary saying that we all emotionally eat and it's not a bad thing. So that's kind of flipping it on its head for what most would think emotional eating is. It's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So
and
it's quite interesting.
It is. And this is where I think, like, when I talk to people about it and I've never spoken to them about it before, like their minds just go, and get
Yeah.
blown because they're like, I've never even thought of it this way. So I think emotional eating gets that bad rap because
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at emotions as good or bad, positive or negative.
Okay.
So a lot of times when I ask people, okay, what are emotions? What are good emotions? They'll say, oh, like happy and joy and love. Yeah, those make us feel good. Those are comfortable emotions to feel. Well, what do you think bad emotions are? And I get the
Mm.
answer, angry, sad, depressed, lonely, all of those emotions that are uncomfortable to feel. And if we
Mm.
eat when we're feeling emotional, we tend to think we're eating when we're feeling those uncomfortable emotions, which most of society has labeled as bad or negative. And that's why emotional eating gets such a bad rap, because it's tied in with what society views as bad emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So what I propose is to everybody listening, everybody watching, is to let go of that label, that judgment of emotions being good or bad. And let's look at emotions as just being messages from your body. It's your
Mm-hmm.
body's way of trying to communicate something with you. So if I'm feeling happy, which is a comfortable emotion, my body might be telling me, hey, this is a really good thing. We like doing this. This feels good. Keep doing it. And if we, experience anger, our body might be telling us, hey, something is wrong and we don't like this. Do something,
Mm-hmm.
please. Rather than, this is so negative, I shouldn't be feeling this.
So why do you think emotional eating isn't such a bad thing then? Can you explain that?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing because we do it all the time. One, and think about it. If anybody listening or watching has had a kid or has been around babies,
Mm-hmm.
baby comes out and it's red-faced and it's screaming and then it's crying and it is not happy. What is one of the first things that we give that baby when it's born? A breast
Milk.
or a bottle?
Yeah, milk.
Yeah, some sort of
Mm-hmm.
nutrients coming in through the mouth. So we are taught from the moment of birth, almost like the moment we come out, that eating and sucking and having something in our mouths is calming and soothing.
Mm.
It is the very first coping skill that we learn. And that gets reinforced throughout, the first couple years of life, in that when the baby cries, mom or caregiver gives the baby a boob or a bottle or a pacifier.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the way, usually about 2, 3, that message starts to shift. And it's usually when we're completely on solid foods and we're supposed to be growing up. And that, they take our binkies away, or whatever they call them in your neck of the woods. Take away the pacifier. No, you're not a baby. You don't need to do that. And then we really start to get on kids and ourselves if we're eating to soothe. But
Mm-hmm.
it works, Anita. It works so well. And that's why people keep coming back to it, because it does. It just, one, it gives us something to focus on other than whatever is going on in our world. And it really helps to turn on that parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and digest. It's where we can take a deep breath and relax. And it
Mm.
like almost instantly turns that parasympathetic nervous system on. And then every time that we eat something and we feel better, it reinforces that behavior. So the first 2 to 3 years of our life, we have had that behavior reinforced over and over and over again. And then suddenly it's shameful and we shouldn't be doing it anymore. But it's a very valid coping skill.
Okay. So how are our thoughts and emotions affecting our eating habits? Because like you've just
Nice little
unpacked,
segue there.
yeah, like you've
Yeah.
unpacked some of that. Just yeah.
Yeah. So I practice from a cognitive behavioral framework, which
Mm-hmm.
states that our thoughts, our cognitions, our emotions, and our behaviors are all connected. So you can think of it kind of as a triangle,
Mm-hmm.
just if you need like a visual. So my perspective is that most things start with some sort of physical sensation, some sort of message from the body that sparks some thought.
Mm-hmm.
The thought then sparks an emotion. And that thought and emotion paired together create our behavior. Our behaviors then either reinforce our perspectives or give us counter evidence and sort of challenge it, depending on what we're thinking and feeling. So if I think that emotional eating is a bad thing, and I feel guilt around that, it's going to lead to more guilt and shame when I eat emotionally, which is not what we're going for. We want to get rid of all that stuff. That doesn't feel good. We don't need to hold on to it. Whereas if I think emotional eating is a valid coping tool, every time I feel emotional and I use food to soothe, I don't feel bad. I just say, oh, hey, look, I'm taking care of myself. Go me.
So therefore, in a way, it's emotional eating is a continuum. What does that actually mean? What do you mean by that then? Because it's continuously happening, isn't it?
It's continuously happening, but also if we look at, and I think this is where that emotional eating gets that bad rap too, like it's all connected. It's wonderful. I love it. If we think of it on a continuum of like point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this scale, on this continuum, on point 1, we have eating for gratification, sensory gratification. That's eating when we're hungry. It's eating and really enjoying the tastes and the textures of our food. And then we move all the way to the other side of the continuum to that point number 5, which is punishment. And that's where people really start to be like, oh no, emotional eating is bad because I always feel bad when I do it. So if we go through this continuum, we have sensory gratification at point 1, which is just that I'm hungry, I'm going to eat, I'm going to enjoy it, getting a lot of that sensory gratification out of it. Then we have point number 2, which is eating for comfort. And here's where that like, hey, emotional eating is a valid coping skill comes in. Because we're eating things that provide comfort. So a lot of times that includes comfort foods. So things that have been kind of taught to you to be comforting, soothing. Over here in the States, chicken noodle soup, when we're not feeling well, is it's like a big thing. So then we've got comfort. For me, that was always grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Because that's what my mom would make. So every time I eat it, I think of her. Then we have point number 3, distraction. And that's when we're eating to distract ourselves from what's going on. So that's when you sit down in front of the TV and start munching away on whatever you're eating, whether it's chips, popcorn, candy, dinner, if you eat in front of the TV, because you just need to get away from the day. It was a wild day and you just need to distract from it. Then at point number 4, we have numbing out, avoiding. And distraction and numbing are very closely related, but numbing out is when we're having an emotion that we don't want to feel. It's when we're having thoughts that we don't want to think. And so in order to stop that, we just numb those thoughts and emotions by filling our stomach. And then we have that last point, which is point 5, that punishment. And that's eating large amounts of food, either very angrily or forcefully, with the intent, whether it's conscious or not, to cause discomfort in ourselves. And so when people often think of emotional eating, they think of that 3, 4, 5 points on the continuum of distracting, numbing, and punishment, and forget about those first 2 points of sensory gratification and comfort, where if we're doing those 2 points, the other ones don't tend to have as much power, and we don't engage in that, numbing, distracting, and punishment behavior as much.
If you were going to use food to cope, what should you know?
Yeah, good question. Because, like I said, using food to cope is completely acceptable. It's a very valid coping skill. And we want to stay on that 1-2 level of the continuum, which means we need to keep our brains online. Because as soon as our brains check out, that's when we start to go down downhill, so to speak. So I propose eating mindfully.
Mm-hmm.
And I know mindfulness is kind of like a buzzword. It's very trendy these days. I'm happy to report I was doing this much before this became the cool thing to do. But I want to kind of take your viewers and listeners through what that might look like. Because if you just say mindful eating, people are like, oh, you want me to do yoga while I eat? No.
No.
No. So what I'm going to suggest is our five senses. I have an activity, and this is something that you can do to help just bring your mind online. It's something you can do to help connect the mind and the body before you eat. It also helps to prepare your stomach and your brain for digestion. It's just great all around, and it's fun, and it's something anyone can do. As long as you can remember our five senses, you got this.
Okay.
So first, we have to go through. What are our five senses, Anita?
Well, you got taste, smell, see, touch, hear.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So if you can name them, you got this. I usually start with sight because there's a lot more that I can see. And it's just the first thing that I think of. So when you're going to eat a meal or a snack or any type of food, the first step is to look at the food.
Okay.
Notice and appreciate the appearance. And if it looks like, I don't know, the dungeon guards just slopped it on a tray and shoved it through the slats to you, probably not going to be that attractive, probably not going to be that interesting. And okay, yeah, I'm just going to shovel it in because it doesn't look good. But if you go to a fancy restaurant, they plate the food. So it might be a very small amount of food, but man, does it look pretty. So you don't have to go to that extreme of putting flowers and drizzling things on your plate, but take a little extra time and put it on the plate nicely, and then take a few moments before you start eating to just notice the food and how it looks. Appreciate all of the sights, all of the colors. Then let's go to smell. Because for most of us who can smell, smelling food is really pleasant. And
Definitely.
it helps to turn the brain on and say, oh, brain, we're going to eat, which then sends signals to your stomach. Hey, stomach, get ready. Food's coming in, which then starts all of the digestive juices flowing. And it just helps everything move at a better rate. Pause for a moment after you've noticed all of the food on your plate and just take a nice deep breath in through the nose and savor the smell of whatever you're about to eat. Then we're going to move into sound and hearing. And I know this is weird because people are like, I don't want to hear my food. My food isn't talking to me. It's not making any noises, but it is. And I don't know if you knew this, Anita, but there was a lot of research that went into making chips crack at a specific decibel that is most pleasing to the ear.
Absolutely, yes.
I read that and I went, this is just wild. How, like, thousands of dollars have gone into making a chip crack so that it's pleasant for us to hear and we keep eating them.
Yes.
That's just wild. So if you're eating or when you're eating, notice those sounds. Notice the chips cracking. Notice the crackers crunching, or, if there's any other sounds around, just notice them. Then we've got touch. Once the food is in your mouth, notice all of the textures. Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it soft? Is it crunchy? You don't really have to do anything other than just notice. And it's just helping to bring the brain back online. And then lastly, taste. And I leave this one for last because all these other steps kind of come in before we're actually tasting the food because it's in our mouth. But taste the food, like really taste it. If you're eating out or you're eating at a friend or family member's house, see if you can pick out some of the ingredients that are in that meal. This is
Interesting.
one of my favorite games to play with
Mm,
myself, and my friends get in on it sometimes too. When I still had an office, like a brick and mortar physical office, my friend brought in, we shared an office space, and she brought in blondies. So it's like the
mhm,
vanilla version of a brownie.
mhm,
And I was really hungry, so I was eating it on my half-hour drive home. And I'm eating, and then I'm like, there's something different about this bar. And so I'm running
mhm.
through, okay, nope, it's not this, it's not that. So I pick up my phone and I call my friend and I said, Mary, did you use margarine or butter in this? She went, margarine? Why? I said, I knew it. I knew that's what it was. So when you play this game and
Oh,
you start to pick out all of these different flavors, you get to notice those interesting little things, and you can start to notice if somebody uses butter versus margarine, or sea salt versus table salt.
yes.
And
It's
it's
really
just it
interesting, isn't it?
yeah, and it's just like something fun that you can play with yourself, and I don't know,
Mm,
get other people on board. If you have kids at home, it's kind of fun to pull them in with it. And then my
mm,
last thing with the taste thing, if you're eating the food and it isn't hitting the spot, it isn't tasting good, you have my
mhm,
permission to stop eating it.
mm.
You don't need to keep eating it just because you put it on your plate. Everybody can hand in their Clean Plate Club cards today. We don't need to stay as part of that club. Yeah, so just kind of wrapping up that little five senses activity. You can start with any sense if you're having trouble remembering them. But I usually just start with noticing how the food looks on the plate, smelling it, hearing it, if there are any noises, touch, texture, is it hot, cold, and then lastly, the taste. Just noticing the tastes, different flavors, picking out different ingredients. And that's just a really great way to be mindful with your food and to play a little game with yourself. Other ways that you can
Excellent.
be mindful with food is just a simple slowing down. So often we
Mm,
get in this mood where we have to eat very quickly. And if we just slow down, we often find that, oh, I'm not as hungry as I thought I was.
So, how can one cope with emotions without using food always? There are other things we can use. So, what do you recommend for that?
Yeah. I always preface this with, when we look at emotions as messages from the body rather than this good, bad, positive, negative, it takes off a lot of that pressure. And there's not this like need to cope or manage my emotions. When we allow them to just happen, they only stick around for like 90 seconds. Again, research has shown that on average, when we have an emotion, if we feel it and allow it to be expressed, it sticks around for 90 seconds. That's a minute and a half. That's not very long.
Gosh, no,
Yeah.
not at all.
It becomes one of those, like, I don't know, sticky little gremlins when we try to push it away, when we try to avoid feeling it, it keeps coming back saying, hey, hey, hi, hello, I'm here, please feel me, hello, acknowledge me, hi, until we finally acknowledge. But by that time, it's getting so loud that we have like this intense reaction to it. Whereas if we feel an emotion, allow it to be experienced, it then just kind of like goes away. It comes
Mm,
back, sure, but it doesn't stick around and it's not as intense.
mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
part of my like first coping skill is, hey, just feel the feels. It's okay. They're only going to last a minute, minute and a half, and then
Mm,
they'll go away and you can go on with your day.
yeah,
The other thing, if we're looking at
definitely.
that emotional eating continuum, that avoidance and distraction are where we're using food in maybe ways that don't feel as good. So let's find other ways that we can avoid and distract, because it is not feasible, nor is it enjoyable to feel our emotions 24/7. If we're recording this podcast and something comes up for me personally, and I'm reminded of something that makes me sad, it's not professional or appropriate for me to just start bawling.
Mhm.
So I need to find a way to during these speaking gigs, during podcast episodes, while I'm with clients, to keep it together for that time. That doesn't mean that I'm going to never feel again. It just means for this moment, I need to have something so that I can help the other person. So if we're looking at distracting techniques, things that are helpful to distract when we're feeling an emotion that we don't want to feel or don't want to feel in the moment, social media, scrolling through social media, definitely a good one. Again, dose makes the poison, in that if that's all we're doing, it becomes problematic. Just like with food, if we're always turning to food, that becomes problematic. Scrolling social media is a good one to do in the moment. That is not necessarily something that's going to help long term. So we want to have skills that we can use in the moment when things come up, and we want to use skills that have more of that cumulative effect, that they're going to build on each other each time we do it. So scrolling social media, that short term, sure. Turning on music, dancing, good short term. Calling a friend, good short term. Thinking more of like long term cumulative coping skills, things like yoga, meditation, some type of movement that you enjoy. So if you enjoy running, great. That's going to help. And the more you do that, the more coping you're going to have. Walking, if running isn't your thing, walking is great too. Dancing, any type of movement that you enjoy, going to the gym, lifting weights at home, finding what that is for you. And please don't do something just because it's trendy and it's what all of the cool people are doing. Find something that you enjoy, because that's going to be even more beneficial.
Definitely. And I think you've just covered some of this. What resources do you recommend, daily tips for anyone that wants to address their emotional eating habits to be healthier?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm very much like non-diet, health at every size aligned, which means I look at health promoting behaviors for the benefit of health rather than weight loss. I'm very neutral about weight loss and weight gain. I don't really care about it. It happens. Bodies change. But if we want to be healthier, whether that's because we want to live longer, because we want to have a better quality of life, because we want to be able to do more things or spend more time with our kids and our friends, moving is a really great way to do that. It keeps our body limber, and bodies at rest stay at rest, and a body in motion stays in motion. Doesn't mean you have to move all the time. That becomes problematic too. But again, health promoting behaviors like drinking water. I think most of us, probably 95% of us, could drink more water. And not because we're trying to fill our stomachs up, just because our bodies are predominantly water and we are water based. And the more hydrated we are, especially for those of us that are moving into these hotter summer months, when we tend to lose more water, it just keeps the body lubricated and everything flows so much better, and we just feel better in general.
Definitely. So where can the listeners find you online? What's your website?
Yeah, so website is really easy, www.sabrinarogers.com. And I'm sure Anita's going to put all of these links up for you. But if you're on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of those are at Sabrina Rogers, LMHC, which stands for Licensed Mental Health Counselor. And I know she mentioned at the beginning of the show, you can also find me on the podcast, The Emotional Eating Therapist Show. Wherever you're listening to podcasts, it should be there.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us today, Sabrina Rogers.
Yeah.
Couple of questions for you that I do ask all my guests. What is one of the most courageous things you've done?
Yeah, I love that you ask these questions, because it really makes people think. And I'm going to say the most courageous thing I did, which some people would probably say was also my craziest thing that I've done, is I moved 1,300 miles. I don't know what that converts to in kilometers off the top of my head, but I moved basically from one part of the States to almost the other side of the United States when I was 21 for a boy.
Ooh. That's
Yeah.
excellent.
We had dated in high school and then got disconnected for 3 years, got back in touch. And a year later, I was like, okay. And we've been together for 19 years now.
Oh, wow. That's lovely. Lovely story.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's my most courageous thing because I left everything and everybody I had ever known.
Mm.
And all I knew in Wisconsin was Brian and his family. So I completely started over, which was actually probably one of the best things I've ever done.
Oh, that's beautiful. So, what is your definition of courage?
Yeah, it's another good question. And I know there's like textbook definitions of, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I think that is a good definition, but it's also, I don't know, for me falls a little short in that it's like surface level of like, yeah, I can feel the fear and I can do it anyway. But it also, in my mind, kind of takes away from that level of fear. Like for me, courage is recognizing, oh, this is a big risk. This has a lot of unknown things. I don't know all of the answers. Because if we know all of the answers, if we know how it's going to turn out, where's the courage in that? And so it's acknowledging all of those unknowns, all of that fear, the intensity of the fear, and then actively choosing, I'm going to do that. Not anyway, but because the possibility is really, really great.